Okay, I'm going to do a close reading of Sharon Olds' poem Last Night. Let's see if I can share screen. Perfect. And let me get some annotations on. Beautiful. Okay, I'll read it through one time. And I want you, as we go through, to think about your first impressions. What kind of experience is the speaker experiencing, and what kind of feelings it gives you? And then we'll actually go through the close readings of poetry handout that you have. It's available on Canvas. And some questions to first ask yourself. What is the first thing you notice about the poem? So is it the title, Last Night? Is it kind of the structure, which we will talk about in just a second? Any repetition, or the overall mood? What kind of impression is it giving you? So let's go through. The next day, I am almost afraid. Love? It was more like dragonflies in the sun, 100 degrees at noon, the ends of their abdomens stuck together. I close my eyes when I remember. I hardly knew myself, like something twisting and twisting out of a chrysalis, enormous, without language, all head, all shut eyes, and the humming like madness, the way they writhe away and do not leave, back, back, away, back. Did I know you? No kiss, no tenderness, more like killing, death grip holding to life, genitals like violent hands clasped tight, barely moving, more like being closed in a great jaw and eaten. And the screaming, I groaned to remember it. And when we started to die, then I refused to remember the way a drunkard forgets. After you held my hands extremely hard as my body moved in shudders like the ferry when its axle is loose past engagement. You kept me sealed exactly against you, our hairlines wet as the arc of a gateway after a cloudburst. You secured me in your arms till I slept. That was love, and we woke in the morning, clasped, fragrant, buoyant. That was the morning after love. Okay, there's so much going on in this poem. I absolutely love this poem because you can read into it as much as you would like. We have where to start. Okay, so first off, the title, Last Night. Now we know it's a sexual experience that the speaker has encountered. And the speaker, we can't assume is Sharon Olds. We don't know that it's her. So we actually don't know if the speaker's male or female or anything. The structure, you have all one stanza here, and it's somewhat hard to follow, and you want to know why. Why for yourself might it be hard to follow? I read it how it should be read, but for you, you might have had a difficult time stopping when you need to stop. And that's because the punctuation is a guide, but at the same time, there are places where lines are enjambed, and I'll point those out to you. So here, everywhere, there's enjambment. But where we should really start a line, we've actually ended with that subject, and the punctuation is a little funky. Let's give you another example. You would think that the line would end here at a period, and then we would start the line with word after. Anyway, that's not happening throughout the entire poem, right? And it's to kind of catch you off guard and make you work really hard at what's going on. And it's a little confusing, and it can be frustrating. And I think the confusion of the way it's structured and presented to us grammatically might reflect how the speaker feels about this particular encounter, because we don't know what kind of sexual experience this was. There are clues here, and we'll get to those, but you might think at first, well, maybe this is violent. This is it rape? I mean, no more killing, death grip, holding to life, violent, like genitals, like violent hands, da 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 da. So we have that, and the speaker's questioning if this is love, right? We can't necessarily equate sex and love, but this is the speaker's kind of running this through his or her head, and then has come to the conclusion at the end, oh, this was the morning after love. So perhaps this experience was an encounter that was loving, whether it was or not. Let's dive a little deeper. If we're looking at language, this word chrysalis might actually, oops, let me get out of, I want to take over the mouse. Hang on. Okay. Let's just look up chrysalis so you know what we're dealing with here. This is a chrysalis. So kind of the cocoon stage. Let's see, the outer, hard outer casing enclosing a chrysalis, a transitional state. So she emerged from the chrysalis of self-conscious adolescence. That's the example we're given here from the dictionary. So what might this mean if we're thinking about the image of a chrysalis and it being a transformational state, transformative state, kind of a metamorphosis of some type? Then what might that, how might that represent this particular sexual encounter? And students in the past have said, well, this is someone who was a virgin and this is their first experience. This is their first sexual encounter. And I can completely read that as, using the context that we have, kind of this confusion throughout. Is it love? At first, it's disgusting, right? It was more like all of these layers of similes here. Let's layer upon layer the similes, like dragonflies in the sun, 100 degrees at noon, the ends of their abdomen stuck together. I hardly knew myself, like something twisting and twisting out of a chrysalis. And we continue to have these similes. Genitals like violent hands, more like being closed in a great jaw, etc. I think there's some more I'm missing, but we have all of these, let's see, all of these similes here. And they don't start off very positively, right? This is kind of a disgusting image here, more like dragonflies in the sun, 100 degrees at noon. Oh, it sounds sticky and disgusting. Our abdomens are stuck together, but perhaps this first sexual encounter, it is kind of disgusting. It is a little confusing. It's a bit animalistic. It's something about it is just not the way that he or she had envisioned. And then the twisting and twisting out of a chrysalis, this kind of, okay, now it's this metamorphosis here. But still, and not a good way, right? The humming like madness, the way they writhe away and do not leave, back, away, back. So this is in our close reading where we're encountering, we're in the first question. Was there any repetition? And this is repetition here. The way they writhe away, do not leave, back, away, back. And students in the past have said, well, maybe this back, away, back is kind of like the speaker putting his or her hands up, saying, I don't want this. I didn't want this. And some people said, well, at this point it makes it non-consensual. We don't exactly know, but there could be that switch in someone's frame of mind if this is a first experience or a not so gentle or loving experience, that someone at that time is thinking, I don't want this anymore. Can this end? Right? Then the speaker asks, did I know you? So we don't know, is this someone a stranger or is it a friend? Is it someone that they know? No kiss, no tenderness. This is not, whether it's actually someone he or she knew or not, right? It might not be a stranger. It might be a friend, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. But still, it wasn't the encounter they were expecting. No kiss, no tenderness. More like killing, death grip, holding to life, genitals like violent hands, clasped tight, barely moving, more like being closed in a great jaw and eaten. The screaming, I groaned to remember it. So the screaming, are we at this point, is it becoming more pleasurable? So here, This terrible writing on the screen. Is there pain here? Does it hurt? I mean, I don't know what we're getting at, but at this point, the screaming, we don't know if that's a good thing, still in pain, or is it more pleasurable kind of screaming? When we started to die, le petit mort, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but it's French, right? And it means the little death. So what is the little death in a sexual encounter? An orgasm. Woo, went there. Okay, then I refuse to remember, the way a drunkard forgets. Okay, so they've reached that point. After they both have climaxed, you held my hands extremely hard as my body moved in shudders like the ferry when its axles is past engagement. You kept me sealed exactly against you, our hairlines wet as the arc of a gateway after a cloudburst. They're sweaty, blah, blah, blah. You secured me in your arms till I slept. That was love. We woke in the morning clasped, fragrant, buoyant. So a little lighter, bouncier, fragrant, just sexual, right? Clasped, that they were together, that maybe they had cuddled all night, something like that. But either way, whatever's happened at this point, it's turned more into a space of love where the speaker feels secure enough to sleep in this person's arms. So again, this has changed. This has gone through a series of various feelings and emotions throughout this entire poem. And I think that does reflect with maybe a confusing or frustrating sexual experience, a first time, etc. Okay, let's see if I can back out all the way. Great. Okay, what is the theme of the poem? We don't exactly know. We just know that it's a sexual encounter, and we can read into it many different ways. Which words did you notice first? And that's for you, whatever stands out for you. Every reader's going to read this a bit different. But chrysalis definitely stood out to me the most when I first read this as kind of being just an odd word to add to a poem, whether it's about love or just sex, whatever it is. It was an interesting word. Why do you think the poet uses certain words? Definitely to catch our attention, make us think about transformation and metamorphosis in this case. Any repetitions of words? Yes, we saw twisting and twisting as being repetitive, and then back, away, back, perhaps the speaker trying to get out of the situation or not being completely sure about the situation. Do certain words seem to clash with each other? What effect does that have? Or is there any tension or conflict here? Definitely, there's some internal conflict. There's tension throughout the entire poem, and that's from kind of the confusion and the chaos, perhaps, of this particular situation. Let's see. Word orders. Okay, end stops and enjambment. So we talked about enjambment, which is really throughout the entire poem, except here, the very beginning, at the very end, you have end stop. You have a complete stop at the end of a sentence with a period. And that's interesting because it's kind of bookended the very beginning and the very end, and throughout all of the encounter, that's where the chaos is. That's where the confusion is. But it's at the beginning and at the end where at the end, he or she has finally come to grips with it. And then the beginning is when, oh, the next day, I am almost afraid. I've thought on it and I don't know exactly what to think about it, right? So this, leaving it with this positive and this positive space at the end of the poem, and then the next day kind of wondering, should I have done that? Was that supposed to happen? is this awkward, right? Mm. Style and tone. Is it elaborate, dense, simple, archaic, formal, conversational, descriptive, abstract, so on? It's descriptive. There's nothing so formal about it. Um, and it's not elaborate, but it's also not simple or archaic, formal. It's descriptive, and it's conversational. Love? Did I know you? It's these questions throughout, these kind of rhetorical questions, and this stream of consciousness thought process, right? Short and choppy, long and flowing. What's the rhythm like? There's no rhyming here. That's not what we're getting at. It's all free verse. But there are short and choppy places, and there are longer stream of consciousness places where um, the speaker's just kind of going on and on within that thought and not really stopping. Again, with the grammatically, some of it's grammatically incorrect. There's some comma splices, there's some run-ons, right? And it's not supposed to be this perfectly grammatical poem. I think that's what we're going to stop at. We kind of realize some of the significance and the representation behind some of the words and the similes. We'll stop there. I do want you to be familiar with the close readings of poetry, these questions to ask yourself: first impressions, word choice, also called diction, word order, syntax, style and tone, structure and patterns, and imagery and symbolism. So you can kind of read it for yourself. When you're reading other poems, read through a close reading. Okay, hope that helps.